All right, so I'm back on my favorite place, female dating strategies. And I see this here article entitled Backfooting, the disturbing new dating trend men don't want you to know about. So I'm like, what is this trend that I'm doing that I don't want people to know about? All right, and so it says, we've all heard of dating terms like negging, breadcrumbing, but have you heard of backfooting? So they go on to describe what backfooting is, which they define as a manipulation tactic where a man accuses a woman of something bad to put her on the back foot, causing her to behave defensively in a way that is beneficial to him to prove she is not like that. And it goes on to say, I guess they coined this term in part 2 of an interview they had done. And they also put links to part 2 and part 1. I'll put a link to this article in this description here. So I haven't looked at any of these. And they say, while this term might be recent, the strategy itself is nothing new. In his book, why does he do that inside the minds of angry and controlling men? Bancroft describes a type of abuser whose possessiveness takes the form of sexual jealousy, and he constantly accuses his partner of cheating on him, even though he has no evidence. His accusations cause her to police her own behavior and avoid situations where he might accuse her of cheating, such as being alone without him. It goes on to say the source of his sexual jealousy is not because he actually believes his own accusations. Abusers usually don't. But because he is possessive of her and wishes to isolate her. It says possessiveness is not a sign of a man's love, it's a sign of his ownership. Isolation is a tactic often used by abusers to cut off victims from her social connections, which give her strength. Okay, so far I'm not seeing nothing that I necessarily disagree with. I think people do manipulate, abuse people, men and women. So in transparency, I had already read this, so I kind of know what's ahead. This is kind of the part we get into where I took a little, I wouldn't say offense. I just thought it was misguided, right? And so what I'm looking to do here is not to, I'm not looking to debate nobody. I think that, to me, the purpose of this page is for women to get dating advice. And I think that's good. I think that women should, just like men should do. I think people in general should pass down experiences that they had that will be beneficial to others who are coming in the game after them. I just think that, and I hope that people are taking this as one potential thing or one potential meaning of what someone's behavior could be, right? So for example, in my opinion, I can't really say, so I can come up with any term: ghosting, gaslighting, backfooting. I can say someone is exhibiting behavior that reminds me of this, but I cannot necessarily say that they're doing that unless I know their intentions. Somehow they've indicated their intentions, and yes, their intentions, based on their own intentions, that's what they're doing. So without having that firm understanding that that's what someone's intending to do, you can really misread what someone's actions are, right? And think that they're doing these things that means that they're backfooting, when in reality, they're not even thinking about that shit. And so what I'm looking to be able to do is offer that contrast to just say, hey, just kind of like I did in the previous video, like, hey, these guys are addicted to porn. Like, no, they're not. This guy might have a bad prostate or he thinks you're ugly. So same thing here, just offering a counter, perspective to somebody's behavior patterns that they think indicate one thing, but in my opinion, it might indicate something else. Not saying that it doesn't indicate that, right? Just to be clear, I'm just saying that I think it's smart, if you don't know, to keep in mind multiple different possibilities, not just one, right? And so this is one. I'm not saying that this will or will not be the case, but just consider that this perspective of, what backfooting is, consider that alongside of what I'm saying, right? Because what you don't want to do is you meet someone and they're doing shit and you just I read this article about backfooting and he's doing these things, so he must be backfooting. When in reality, he could just be whatever, just him, and you just don't know him yet, right? All right. It goes on to say, backfooting is a strategy not only used by abusers, but also by ordinary low-quality men as well. For example, a broke man might accuse women of being materialistic, gold diggers, and in an effort to prove she's not materialistic, she offers to pay for him, lowers her expectations, and stop asking as much from him. A broke man might accuse. So the thing here is, number one, like, why are you dealing with someone that you would consider broke, first of all? So if someone is outside of your standards, financially or otherwise, right? So you're defining this person as broke. Why the fuck do you care what he has to say? Like, that, to me, that's just bad choosing. So it's always going to be people out there that have opinions, right? And so you just got to find somebody that opinion is different from yours. I don't think that the person will be backfooting. If he's broke and he accuses a woman of being materialistic gold diggers, I mean, you can really unpack that. Like, what would prompt, what action or behavior is he observing that would prompt him to use that term, right? So without knowing that, you know, how can I say that he's wrong? You know what I'm saying? I can't say he might be, but let's say if he's right. Let's say, you know, just based on what he's observing from her, he could be observing her own conversation and coming to the conclusion just based on her conversation that yes, she is indeed a gold digger. And if he chose to express that to her, okay, at that point, it should become clear to her that they're not compatible. And so she should not give a fuck what he has to say going forward. Like, okay, I'm into luxury items, and you think that my conversation about luxury items makes me a gold digger? Clearly, we're not for each other, right? So that's how I look at that one. This next one, it says a lazy man might accuse his partner of nagging or being too demanding. In an attempt to prove that she's not a nag, she becomes hesitant about asking him to do things and starts letting more and more of his bad behavior slide. So what I don't like about this is that, okay, they're characterizing a man as being lazy, right? A lazy man. So to me, I think the concept of lazy is very subjective. What someone considers lazy, someone else might not consider lazy. So clearly the woman is considering this man as lazy, right? Based on her idea of what lazy is. Why the fuck would you choose a lazy man when you can choose a man who's not lazy? So I'm blaming your choices on that. Let's say if you chose him and you thought he was not lazy and you later learned that he's lazy and you have the conversation with him about it. To me, at this point, after the conversation has been had, you either accept the outcome of that conversation and whether or not he lives up to whatever you guys agreed to, or you just move on. So for example, if you guys had a conversation and he's like, you know what, I don't think I'm lazy, I'm not gonna change anything. So you either accept that or you fucking move on. Like, you don't make what you perceive as lazy become a constant theme in a relationship. Yes, that is nagging. Or conversely, if you bring it to his attention and he's like, you know what, you're right, I'm gonna work on these things, and then weeks go by and you're noticing he's not working on those things, in that case, then you do have the right to hold him accountable to his own word, right? Now, after a few instances where you're holding him accountable and you're still not seeing changes, then again, it's on you to either accept, like, okay, fuck it, he's just not gonna change. He said he was, he's not going to, or I'm getting the fuck out of here. Because if you stay, all you're doing is creating conflict and confrontation. So I think in this case, like I said, number one, I don't like the characterization of the man. To me, that indicates a bad chooser. But then also, if you bring it to the table, whatever conclusion that you come to, either accept that or move the fuck on. Low status men often complain about career women and man-hating feminists, which causes women to downplay our achievements, shrink ourselves, and emotionally coddle men to prove we don't hate them. Now, I'm going to speak for myself on this one. So for me, I've interacted with women on different levels of interactions that came from a wide variety of career backgrounds. In some cases, they've had, better career and make more money than me. And that's awesome. I really don't, that doesn't bother me. What does bother me, and this just isn't with women, like if I'm interacting with somebody and it's like, look, hey, I just got this promotion, like, that's great. I just started this business, like, that's great. And I'm interested to know a certain amount about it, right? But you ever been around somebody and that's all the fuck they talk about is their job or their business? And it's like, okay, I was interested in hearing about it because I'm not a hater. And if there's any opportunity for us to build together, I'm interested in pursuing that if it looks good for both of us. But just as a source of conversation, that becomes boring. Like, and it's not about hating and being jealous. I mean, we can talk about basketball. If we're talking about basketball for too long, that becomes boring. We can talk about politics, religion, TV shows, like whatever you're talking about. Like if that becomes a subject for too long, that becomes boring. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and segue to the next point here. So for me, that's why I don't want to hear it. It's not that, oh, you're a woman and you're accomplished and shit and I'm jealous. I'm like, okay, like, that's great. Like, good for you. But now if your accomplishment starts to become a part of your identity and that's how you define yourself, and so you kind of talk about your accomplishments almost as you would your physical appearance, like your accomplishments are who you are, like your accomplishments are your hair or your nails, like your nails are your physical part of who you are, and you start to talk about your job like that, just too much for me. So it's not even about being intimidated or like feeling like you got to downplay it. It's just fucking boring. And again, if you're even my homie, like if my homie, I'm sitting here and he's telling me about a promotion that he's got, I'm happy for him and it's great. And then he kind of goes on and he keeps talking about it. I don't want to hear that shit, bro. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't. I don't give a fuck. This shit ain't putting no money in my pocket. All right, this occurs on both the individual level between couples as well as on the societal level in both the mainstream media and the manosphere. Women are frequently portrayed in a negative light, a form of patriarchal propaganda that causes women to bend over backwards trying to prove they're not like the other girls. See, when I hear shit like this, it's like, it's a lot of conceptual things in here. So I'm going to break this down, what I mean by that, right? So the mainstream media. So personally, I use the term professional media. Like, where this is your job, you work in the media, you get paid. Because I know the word mainstream media now has a negative connotation. And so I don't want to really get into that. But when you say mainstream media, it does have a negative connotation. So this person is already painting a picture of whatever the word mainstream media means to you. But we know it's negative, right? In the manosphere, I don't know as many people know that term, but is essentially the online community of men talking about dating, interacting with women, how laws impact, marriage and divorce and things like this. Okay, so another conceptual thing, the average person knows what the fuck the manosphere is. And then it says, women are frequently portrayed in a negative light. Okay, that's very subjective. So if you talk to a black man in the media, he's portrayed in a negative light. You talk to a black woman, she's portrayed in a negative light. You talk to an Asian man, he's portrayed in a negative light. You talk to a white man, he's portrayed, like, everyone thinks they're being portrayed in a negative light by the media. Get used to it. Then it goes on to say a form of patriarchal propaganda. See, this term right here, the patriarchy, it's like so many women are lost in this conceptual world of the patriarchy. And so here's the thing with this, right? I believe that anytime you're interacting with a person and you're using words that are controversial or the meaning is not clear or there's some disagreement about what it means, you don't have the buy-in, all you do is create conflict, right? And if that's what you like to do, that's cool. But if your end result is to partner with someone, you have to reduce conflict, not create conflict. So when you use terms like the patriarchy, or if you call somebody a communist or a socialist or a racist, it's certain terms that, like some people are racist. Like, we know that. And they know they're racist, right? But then there's other people that are not racist, but they might do something that might lead someone else to call them racist, and they're like, wait a minute, I'm not going to wear that label. So how can you ever grow with a person if you're calling them something and they don't see it that way themselves, right? Just using that word is gonna be conflict, as opposed to if you were to describe the behavior that they did and what you think is wrong with that behavior, and then you guys can maybe talk about that, and then maybe from that point you can get some type of, resolution. But when you start throwing these labels out, the patriarchy, you lose so many people doing that shit. And so I know so many women who get lost in these arguments and debates about the patriarchy. Nobody wants that. All right. And then so it starts to wrap up. So what's wrong with being like the other girls? Most women are awesome. There's nothing wrong with having expectations of your male partner, and there's nothing wrong with having your own career and social life, no matter how much the low to negative value segment of the male population tries to convince you otherwise. There's no point in trying to prove him wrong or to try to be a good female ambassador. You're not going to be able to change his mind about you or improve his overall low opinion of women. You cannot convince him otherwise, because his accusations are a reflection of himself, not you. Backfooting is like quicksand. The more you try to struggle against the accusation, the deeper you sink into the trap. So I agree. There's nothing wrong with having expectations of your partner, and there's nothing wrong with having your own career and your social life. And I think that if a man is critical specifically of a woman having a career and having a social life, then he probably is like a low value man. I would agree with that. But here's what I'm saying. Going back to having the expectations of your partner, you guys need to have a conversation and establish an agreement. And if you can't, go about your business, because nobody wants to hear, because just like, you're complaining or identifying things about your partner, or you having certain expectations, I guarantee your man has a number of things that he can look at you and go down the fucking list of shit that he's tired of dealing with, or he doesn't like, or he wishes that he can totally eradicate from your personality. But he realizes that, you know what? Despite my intentions to bring up certain things, is going to turn into a conflict. And so the net result is not going to be me resolving something. It's going to be a conflict, which is actually going to make the situation worse. So since the problem is not a deal breaker, I'll deal with it. No big deal. Right? And so I think that when a man is approaching shit like that, and he knows in his mind is a list of things that he could probably go in on, but then he's hearing from you all of the shit that you don't like. Yeah, he does feel like, you know what? Can we just break up? Can you just go find someone else that checks all these boxes? Because clearly I don't. And so I just think that the perspective I'm trying to offer here is that don't assume that when a man is behaving a way you don't like, that he's doing some strategy, or he's backfooting, or he's gaslighting, or he's trying to manipulate. Maybe sometimes it's just that you've selected a man that's not fit for you, right? And instead of accepting that and say, you know what, I made a choice and I jumped in this thing too early before I really got to know this person, and now my feelings are involved. So now I can either just accept, like, this is what I got, right? And so my feelings can stay happy and just go along, or I could leave and go through the discomfort of breaking up and that process and the healing process. But what you don't want to do is stick around and constantly bitch and complain about shit that's fundamental to who the person is. So that's what I'm trying to point out here. So if you choose bad, fucking own up you made a bad choice and ride it out, or get the fuck out of it. But don't sit here and categorize a man as lazy, or he's this or he's that, because he's saying shit that you don't like to hear, right? He's responding to your behavior in a way that you don't like to hear. So therefore he must be doing something. He must be gaslighting you. He must be backfooting you. He must be ghosting you. It's always some negative thing that a guy must be doing, as opposed to looking in the mirror and understanding that you're a human being that who is not perfect, and probably offer a lot of room for improvement when interacting with a man. But to wrap this shit up though, reject men's labels of you. If a man makes a baseless accusation against you, or women in general, don't take it personally, and don't try to prove him wrong. block and delete his number. Okay? Smart. This is where the shit gets stupid. Or if you're in a safe distance from him and you like to have some fun, you could always double down on whatever he's accusing you of, right? So I would encourage women, men, children, dogs, cats, snakes, rats, organisms, viruses. If you can only do something where you're in a safe space to do it, just don't do it. Just don't do it. Like, if I need to be in an ivory tower to talk shit, then I probably shouldn't be talking shit. That's why I don't talk shit to people. Because I don't want to say nothing on the internet that if I met someone in public, it would be rough for me to have to defend it without having to go to extreme measures, right? That's why I never bully people. Because why the fuck would, oh, I'm bigger than this guy, so I'm gonna be rough with him. So then all of a sudden, a guy bigger than me comes around. Now I gotta change my whole energy. So why would you encourage someone to do something that they wouldn't otherwise do, right? You got to be in a safe, because what happens then, you do that shit, you rile this dude up, and he catches you somewhere, now you got a dead person on your hand. Yeah, the guy, would he be fucked up for having done it? Of course he would be. I'm not defending that shit. Of course he would be. But that doesn't change the fact that she's a dead person. So I encourage people, and again, just men, women, children, everybody, don't do that shit. If you need to be in a physical, safe place to say some shit to somebody, then you already know, like, okay, is either this person is just unhinged and I just can't say basic shit without worrying about my physical safety, or I'm purposefully saying some antagonistic shit, which is really what they're indicating to do here, is to say some antagonistic shit. Don't do that. Don't do that, because, you know, while it is wrong for people to respond to words with violence, we know it happens all the time. So I don't know why someone would encourage someone to do that. It's just stupid. But yeah, if you agree or disagree, I don't give a fuck. But drop some comments though.